Mutta täällä porukkaa. Onko täällä porukkaa? Nana. Rauhoitu. No, mutta aloitellaan. Katsotaanpa. Mitä? Pian johtaja on oikein senaatin edessä höpötellä. Katsotaan.
Was a good man, a happy warrior who fought for principles and values I think make our country special, and certainly was a strong proponent of defending the First Amendment, something this committee cares deeply about. I said this over the weekend. I think Charlie lived that scripture verse, 2 Timothy 4:7, fight the good fight.
Charlie Kirkistä nyt taas.
Charlie certainly lived that, and he did it with a smile on his face. And so the tragic killing happened a week ago while we were in markup here in the committee. And I know everyone, our witness was a friend of Charlie's, and I know many people in the dais were as well. So I know we're all praying for Charlie's family. And I would extend a moment to the ranking member if you wanted to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for saying that. The whole country reacted with horror and shock to the brutal assassination of Charlie Kirk in cold blood. And there is never any warrant for political violence in America. And just as we all recoiled together at the shocking assassination of Melissa Hortman and others who died in that Minnesota attack, we all stand together categorically against political violence in America and determined to end these cycles of political violence that have traumatized the country.
Well said. Chair now recognize the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Schmidt, to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance.
No niin, Pledge of Allegiance. Intialainen äijä FBI. Intia vallottaa maailman.
As is customary, we will begin with opening statements. 5 weeks ago, because of the work of Director Patel, we learned that the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee and current United States Senator leaked classified information. We learned this because a whistleblower came forward. Whistleblower with 23 years experience in the intelligence community, a Democrat staffer on the committee, said this: they were pressured to leak classified information, which sort of raises the obvious question. Why would the head of the Intelligence Committee, the chair of that committee, who's supposed to be guarding our secrets, why would he be encouraging the leaking of classified information? Whistleblower told us that answer as well. The leaked information was supposed to be used, the leaked information, false information, was going to be used to indict President Trump. Now, the former chairman wasn't the only person leaking information. Jim Comey was also sharing things he wasn't supposed to share. Again, don't take my word for it. The Inspector General told us this. In his report, he said, quote, James Comey violated FBI policy by disclosing classified information. And what was Comey's motive? Same as the senator from California: to sabotage and undermine President Trump's first term. And we know that Mr. Comey's not been shy about what his objective was. In fact, 4 months ago, he told us. Remember this? 8647. Jim Comey told us. just 4 months ago. Now, how'd they do it? How did the former chair of the intel community, the former FBI director, and others in our government attempt to undermine President Trump's first term? 7 weeks ago, because of the good work of the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, we learned from another whistleblower, a second whistleblower, that in the closing days of the Obama administration, the intelligence community assessment was changed. On December 5th, 2016, they had one assessment. That assessment said Russia did not impact the election vote count. There was a meeting at the White House on December 9th, 2016, where it was decided, no, we're not going to have that. We're going to come up with a new one. And the new one said Russia was trying to influence election and did influence election, which just wasn't accurate. And that new one is published on January 6, 2017. Let's just show you a few things that took place. I want to show you first this email from Admiral Rogers, the head of the NSA. You can see it was December 22nd. It says to Jim, John, and Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Jim Comey. And he says, I asked my team if they've had sufficient access to the underlying intelligence, sufficient time to review that intelligence. On both points, my team raised concern. Further states, my folks aren't fully comfortable. A few hours later, there's an email back to Admiral Rogers. This one is from Jim Clapper, and it says this.
Alas, you share J. Edgar Hoover's dangerous obsession with blind loyalty over professionalism and effective public policy. For Hoover, it was blind loyalty to him in keeping his secrets. For you, it's blind loyalty. In your chair as a Republican witness, observed that you performed terribly, and he called for your ouster. The FBI might be able to survive your delusions of grandeur and the explosively volatile temper that was on display yesterday in the Senate. But the intractable problem is that you are running the FBI not as a law enforcement agency charged with keeping the American people safe, but as a political enforcement agency working directly for the president's vengeance campaign. 7 months in, it's impossible to overstate the destruction, chaos, and demoralization you've brought to the FBI and its workforce and the resulting danger your actions have caused to our country. You've been systematically
Oletteko muuten ikinä nähneet FBI-tyyppejä, jolla olisi tommonen käsikoru? Mitä täällä äijällä on, kun on intialainen rauhan käsikoru? Oikeassa kädessä.
Experts in counter-terror, counterintelligence,
and cybersecurity,
precisely the people who have the expertise you lack, in which the FBI and the country need. They've been expelled from the ranks of the Bureau simply because they did their duty investigating crimes, including those committed by the mob that attacked the Capitol on January 6, 2021, and beat the hell out of more than 140 police officers. Or simply because you suspected them of being insufficiently loyal to Donald Trump. You illegally sacked Brian Driscoll, the former acting director of the Bureau, and a decorated counterterrorism expert who worked at the FBI for nearly 20 years. According to Driscoll, you told him your own job, quote, depended on the removal of agents who worked on the cases against the president, regardless of whether the agents chose to work on those cases or not. You added, quote, the FBI tried to put the president in jail, and he hasn't forgotten it. You forced out the leader of the Salt Lake City field office, Mehtab Saeed, just weeks before Charlie Kirk's assassination, depriving the FBI of an experienced counterterrorism expert described by her colleagues as absolutely the best and legendary. She would have led the FBI's manhunt had she not been fired. When Trump decided that rounding up immigrants with no criminal records was more important than preventing crimes like human trafficking of women and girls, drug dealing, terrorism, and fraud, you ordered the 25 largest field offices to divert thousands of agents away from chasing down violent criminals, sex traffickers, fraudsters, and scammers to carry out this immigration crackdown. Director Patel, you treated the men and women at FBI with disrespect and paranoia. You've assembled a roving band
Kash
of
Patelia grillataan
within
senaatissa.
your office and charged them with conducting unauthorized investigations, targeting and harassing career FBI employees. Amazingly, you forced senior leadership to repeatedly take polygraph tests to prove their political loyalty and pushed out leaders who refused these demeaning exercises. And now we're seeing one very clear reason why you want to build a political FBI, the Epstein files.
Poliittinen
you want
FBI.
an FBI blindly loyal to Trump and to you as his enforcer, so you can continue your cover-up of a massive international sex trafficking ring with more than 1,000 victims, betraying
Sheesh.
all of the survivors of the
Sitä
sexual
syytetään sen
violence.
cover-appaamisesta, sitä syytetään Epsteinin
you called
piilottamisesta.
for full release of Epstein files, telling podcaster Benny Johnson that the only reason the list was not released by DOJ and FBI was, quote, because of who's on that list. Upon your confirmation, you promised that, quote, there will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, no stone left unturned. And anyone from the prior or current bureau who undermines this.
No sitä syytetään siitä Epstein-tiedostojen ja filesien niiden piilottamisesta, koska ennen kuin Trumpista tuli presidentti, niin tämähän lupasi, niiden vaalikampanjahan oli nimenomaan sitä, että niillä on ne kaikki tiedostot ja ne on kaikki ne Epstein, niitä on tosi paljon uhreja, paljon tekijöitä ja kaikki, me saadaan nämä kaikki kiinni ja me pidätetään ne kaikki ja niin edelleen ja ynnä muuta ja sitten kun Trump pääsi presidentiksi, niin sitten Kash Patel on ollut vaan sillä, että niitä listoja vieläkään oikein julkaistu, on levitetty jotain ihan ihmehuuhaa, editoituja videoita kuulemma originaaleina ja se pitelty, että Trump on ollut FBI:lla töissä jotenkin vakoilemassa Epstein ja sen takia sillä on niin paljon yhteiskuvia ja rakkauskirjeitä keskenään. En tiedä, koko tämä homma on sillä, että kukaan nyt oikeasti. Maailma on niin sekaisin. Me ollaan posttotuusaikakaudessa. Kukaan ei voi ikinä. Sen takia me ollaan niin kahtia jaettuja ja polarisoituja, kun kaikilla on oma todellisuutensa ja kukaan ei saa selvää, että mikä se pohjatodellisuus on, mutta kyllä tämä homma vaikuttaa aika oudolta, että on tommonen joku hippikoruja käyttävä, täysin epäpätevä joku Kash Pateli FBI:n direktöörinä ja koko FBI on sille vihainen. Senaatti grillaa sitä, niitä tiedostoja piilotellaan, selitellään jotain ihan omia ja en tiedä kuka on missäkin, mistä oikein. Mä en ihan niitä tiedä. Oscar, alkaako Ranskassa kahtaisessa? Euroopassa on jo pitkälti sisällissodat jo käynnissä. Kato jotain Britanniaa, kato Ruotsia, se on tulossa kaikkialle. Islamisaatiota ei voi pysäyttää, koska ei sitä haluta pysäyttää, vaan tehdään kaikki sen puolesta.
Will be swiftly pursued. This spring, you ordered hundreds of agents to pore over all the Epstein files, but not to look for more clues about the money network or the network of human traffickers. You pulled these agents from their regular counterterrorism or drug trafficking duties to work around the clock, some of them sleeping at their desks, to conduct a frantic search to make sure Donald Trump's name and image were flagged and redacted wherever they appeared, whether an email, a text, a letter, an interview, a photograph, or a video. In May, Attorney General Bondi reportedly told Trump that his name had indeed appeared multiple times throughout the Epstein files. And not long thereafter, in July, you and the Attorney General released a memo claiming that, quote, no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. In a few short months, how did you go from being a crusader for accountability and transparency for the Epstein files to being a part of the conspiracy and cover-up? The answer is simple. You said it yourself, because of who's on that list. Donald Trump's relationship with Epstein over the years is well documented. A week ago, the Oversight Committee released Trump's disturbing birthday book, Note to Epstein, written over a drawing of a woman's naked body, referring to a, quote, wonderful secret. The Oversight Committee obtained the note from the Epstein estate.
Oletteko te nähnyt sen kuvan, mikä lehti se nyt olikaan julkaisi salaisia? Kuka tietää, onko ne aitoja vai ei? Donald Trump väittää, että ne ei ole aitoja ja haastaa ne just oikeuteen 15 miljardin dollarin edestä. Et siinä on kuulemma saatiin jotain kirjeitä Donald Trumpin ja Epsteinin välillä, että on sellainen piirretty tämmöinen naisen kuva, niin kuin ulkomuodot, ja sitten sen sisällä on tekstiä jotain. Tosi cheesy. Se on tosi juustoinen runo jostain, kuinka hyviä kavereita Epstein ja Trump on, ja lopulta siinä lukee, että niin kuin jaamme yhteisen mahtavan salaisuuden. Onko aito, en tiedä.
Not from the FBI, raising questions again of whether the FBI has been withholding documents. While you're unleashing the FBI to cater to Trump's...
Mutta tämä Patel on niin epäpätevä tyyppi, että en mä yhtään yllättäensä tää. Voisi pitääkin paikkansa, että se on vaan laitettu tonne rahan vuoksi piilottelemaan juttuja, mutta se on tosi outo, että se kävi kaikissa Joe Rogan podcasteissa ja se kävi kaikkialla muuallakin eri podcasteissa ja ohjelmissa ja kaikkea kertomassa, kuinka hän on juuri se tyyppi, joka niin kuin nyt äänestetään Trumpia, että saadaan nämä Epstein-failit esille, ja nyt kun Trump on pressa, niin Trump on vaan silleen, että vieläkö te puhutte tästä, ei tämä merkitse mitään, ja mitä ne julkaista, tai no on ne jotain julkaissut, mutta sellaista niin kuin ihan höpö-höpö-settiä, missä ei selviä yhtään mitään, ja kaikki nimet on sensuroitu, ja sinne julkaisi semmoisen videon siitä sellistä kuulemma, että ei siinä ole kukaan mennyt. Mutta sitten se on editoitu. Ne väitti, että sitä ei ole editoitu, mutta kun sä katsot sen metadataa, niin siinä näkyy ihan hyvin selkeästi, että se on editoitu ja exportattu, eli ulkoistettu videoeditointiohjelmasta Adobe Premiereistä, mitä minäkin käytän aina välillä, mutta en tiedä, katsotaan.
Desire to shut down the Epstein inquiry. The first 9 months of the Trump presidency have seen a spate of political violence and domestic terror events. We saw deadly attacks on political figures on both the left and the right. The brutal assassination of Minnesota Democratic House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, and the attempted murder of Democratic State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, who miraculously survived a combined 17 gunshots. We saw an arsonist set Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence on fire. And of course, last week, we saw the horrific, cold-blooded assassination of Charlie Kirk in Utah that has shaken the nation. 1 minute after Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck, a 16-year-old shooter in Evergreen, Colorado, radicalized by white supremacist ideology online, opened fire and critically wounded 2 other students at Evergreen High School. We've seen lethal anti-Semitic violence, including the murder of 2 young Israeli embassy staffers just blocks from the Capitol, and then in the attack on a gathering of Jewish people in support of hostages held in Gaza in Boulder in June. We've seen continued mass shootings at schools, like the domestic terror incident at a Catholic school in Minneapolis last month, which killed 2 children and wounded 18 others. And in August, a man fired more than 500 bullets at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention,
500 bullets.
Who was a Marine veteran and a father. People like Melissa Hortman and Charlie Kirk should be able to participate in politics as elected officials or active citizens without being shot down in cold blood in the United States of America. People should also be able to go to elementary school, to middle school, to high school, to work, to the mall, and to church without being shot down in explosions of gun violence. The important position at the FBI requires a leader who puts public safety and national security and the rule of law first. I'm afraid, Director Patel, you've given us reason to believe you've used the powers of the FBI to serve Donald Trump and his agenda of partisan retribution. You've broken your promise not to do that. You've betrayed Jeffrey Epstein's victims and survivors. You've turned your back on the career law enforcement officers of the FBI, and as a result, you've left all of us less safe than before. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. That opening statement may have been longer than any book director's ever written or without objection, all of the opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. Mr. Patel has been the director of the FBI since February of 2025. He previously served as chief of staff at the Department of Defense, Deputy Director of National Intelligence with the National Security Council, and also as a congressional staffer, as a federal prosecutor.
Ja tämä Patel on kyllä aika pimeää.
Security cases, and he also worked as a public defender in the state of Florida. We welcome our witness, appreciate his work, and thank him for appearing here today. We will begin by swearing you in. Director, would you please stand, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and beliefs?
Katso. Mikä vittu tää? Mikä tää? Intialainen äijä. Ei tiedä mistään minä. Intialainen äijä vaan, ja siellä on joku tommonen tosi virallinen. Mikä tää?
Let the record reflect that the witness has answered in the affirmative. You can be seated as you are. You've been...
Ja musta on hyvä, kun kaikki nämä todistajalausunnot ja kaikki aina perustuu siihen, että joo, mä lupaan, mä en valehtele. Kaikki, mitä mä sanon tästä, että on täyttä totta. Minun kunniani ja Jumalani ja kaikkien nimeä. Äidin nime.
You've been through this yesterday. Did a fine job. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony. Director, you may begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee. I want to begin today by discussing the appalling assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's important for this FBI to be transparent without jeopardizing our investigations, so a little bit of the timeline is important. Charlie Kirk was unfortunately assassinated on September 10th. We immediately, the next day, released images early in the day in local time in Utah to start the public partnership in our manhunt for the assassin and culprits. At approximately 5 p.m. local time, I arrived on the ground and walked the crime scene myself, and we flew multiple FBI assets in and out to process DNA simultaneously while bringing in evidence response technicians, hostage rescue teams, and other experts to assist law enforcement with their investigation. At 8 p.m. local on September 11th, the FBI collected and populated and promulgated at a press conference a video of the suspect on the grounds. We also released enhanced images. Due to that release that I directed and ordered, the suspect involved was apprehended and in custody at 10 p.m. local time. That's less than 2 hours after we did the video release and the photo release. So within 33 hours, that individual suspect was in custody, and his family, who has since been interrogated,
Tänään grillataan
specifically stated
FBI-direktyyriä.
to FBI interrogators that because of the video that the FBI released at my direction and because of the photographs that they released, they identified their son, they confronted their son when he swung by their home, and that's what led to his apprehension. We are still, the FBI, has that investigation ongoing, and it continues to be ongoing. And I want to thank the state of Utah and the state and local authorities there. And I also want to thank the Attorney General and President Trump for directing resources to allow us to conduct that investigation as we have. Under this administration, the FBI has arrested more than 23,000 violent criminals. 23,000 in 7 months.
Jani Kokko, ai hemmetti, se on Jani Kokko. Ei. Onko siitä mikä lehti kirjoittanut siitä Jani Kokon sekoilusta? Mä oon nyt seurannut sitä. Vähän Twitterissä yrittänyt seurata sitä Jani Kokon kohua, kun se rupesi selittämään ihan pokalla. Se oli kopioinut suoraan joltain näyttelijältä englanninkielisen twiitin ja kääntänyt sen suomeksi. Ihan vaan suoraan sellaisena, missä oli jotain, että Charlie Kirkin ampuja oli äärioikeistolainen natsi itsekin ja kaikkea tällaista, että se oli republikaani ja mitä liian. Ja sitten kun porukka oli se, että mitä ihmettä selität, niin se rupesi selittämään, että joo, ja FBI-lähteet sanoi näin. Mun tiedot perustuu FBI:hin. Sitten porukka rupesi linkittämään sille FBI-lähteitä. Porukka rupesi linkittämään sille FBI-lähteitä, missä nimenomaan päinvastaisesti, että ampuja on kaikkia muuta kuin mitä Jani Kokko, Yhdysvaltain asiantuntija, geopoliittinen tutkija, SDP-kärkimies, älykäs mies, selitteli ja lehdistä ei ole vieläkään tähän puuttunut. Hänhän antaa aina vähän neuvoa ulkomaan asioissa. Vähän kun katsotaan Yhdysvaltojen kanssa pitää olla tekemisissä ja toimia ja yksinkertaisemmat faktat ei ole sillä kunnalla. Mä muistan, kun se oli mulla podcastissa ennen 2016, ennen kuin Donald Trumpista tuli presidentti. Jani Kokko oli mukaan podcastissa, Suplassa. Se on varmaan vieläkin jossain 4 Suplan ohjelmista. Jos katsoo Anteria, joku Real Talks tai joku tämmönen. Mä en tiedä, tekee rahaa mun podcastilla siellä vieläkin. Mä en ole saanut penniäkään siitä hommasta ikinä. Anyways, jos ne on vielä siellä, voitte käydä katsomassa se. Ja siinä nimenomaan, siinä podcastissa, mä spekuloin sitä, että miksi Donald Trump tulee voittamaan, ja mä kerron kaikista nettikulteista ja meemeistä ja siitä meemisodasta, mitä siihen aikaan käytiin, ja kaikkea. Se oli ihan kujalla olevina Yhdysvaltain asiantuntija. Se oli ihan varma, että ei Donald Trumpin mitään pressaatuu tai mitään. Ja vai oliko se sen jälkeen? Se taisi olla just sen jälkeen, kun Donald Trumpista tuli presidentti, ja mä yritin selittää sille, että miksi siitä tuli presidentti. Kerroin niitä syitä. Ja ei siinä ollut mitään. En mä itse usko niihin salaliittoihin ja kaikkeen, mitä me yritin hänelle keskustella, että mitä Yhdysvalloissa tapahtuu. Ja sitten myöhemmin, siitä meni joku pari kuukautta, niin sitten mä näen netissä, kun se kirjoittelee ihmisille, että joo, mä saatoin olla tämän hullun äärioikeistolaisen podcastissa, mutta se on ihan salaliittoteoreetin kanssa, kaikkea en mä usko mihinkään, mitä se selitti. Ja kaikkea, mitä mä puhuin siinä, on täysin totta nykyään. Sillä, että nykyään se on ihan valtavirran puhetta, mitä siihen aikaan vielä ei saanut keskustella suoremmin asioista. Ja siis tää ei ole niin kujalla kaikesta kuin ollaan. Se itse selittää salaliittoja ja disinformaatiota ihan niin kuin oikeasti takapuolestaan revittyä juttuja. Ja kun sä todistat sen täysin vääräksi, niin se haukkuu sut salaliittoteoreetikuksi. Tai trolliksi, tai mitä liian. Sen koko argumentti perustuu auktoriteettiin. Mä oon Yhdysvaltain, mä oon tutkinut tätä Helsingin yliopistossa Palestiina-liput kädessä. Tiedot varmasti ihan sikana kaikesta. Well.
6,000 firearms off the streets. 6,000 guns are no longer in the hands of criminals in 7 months. We've identified and found and located 47.
Kuka se Ylen toimittelija oli? Mikä juttu? Onko siitä Jani kokosta ollut yhtään mitään? Jos siitä on ollut valtavirrassa, niin kertokaa ihmeessä.
5% increase year to date last year. We have arrested 1,500 child predators. That is a 10% increase year to date last year in just 7 months. We've assisted our partners with countless counterterrorism operations around the world. We've captured, at the FBI, 4 of the most top 10 wanted fugitives in the world in 7 months. To put that in perspective, that's as many as my predecessor nabbed in the entirety of the Biden administration. We got 4, we got more coming. On top of that, in 2 weeks, thanks to the help of the CIA, we collected and captured one of the individuals responsible for the horrific Abbey Gate bombing that led to the murder of 13 service members. We did that in 2 weeks.
Mitä nämä on tekemistä meidän kysymysten kanssa? Patel. Patel. Sitten kysytään asioita, jos on epäonnistuneet. Hei, mitäs nämä jutut, että voit sä selittää? Se on se, että ei. Kato kaikki asiat, mihin me ollaan onnistuttu. Come on, Patel.
Why we've been executing our Operation Summer Heat, the FBI's national
Operation Summer
focus
Heat.
on targeting violent crime based on intelligence-driven
Tulee vielä Summer Heat, bileet. Operation Summer Heat.
operations. Ask the citizens of Seattle, Miami, Memphis, Charlotte, Chicago, New Orleans. To specifically highlight New Orleans and Nashville, there has been a 250% increase in violent crime arrests in those cities alone, and other mid-major cities that I've just listed. In just a few short months, we have already unleashed 1,000 FBI personnel across this country. Every single state across this country is getting a plus up. This is a fiction that the FBI is short or that we are compromising the men and women in the field. They do not need to be in Washington, D.C., so we're sending them into the field to each and every one of your states. Because of that, crime is at an all-time low. We had to do it because of the explosion of crime. And maybe the most important stat for Americans to realize, in just 7 months, we are on track to produce the lowest in modern US history by double digits. Those are results not of mine. Those are results of the men and women of the FBI. If you want to criticize me, bring it on. But do not attack the brave leaders in the field. We are also working 24/7, 365 on the opioid epidemic that is killing more than hundreds of thousands of people a year. We have seized 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl off the streets so far in 7 months. Year to date, 25% increase. To put that in perspective, that's enough to kill a third of the American population, 120 million Americans. 100,000 kilograms of cocaine and meth gone off the streets. Earlier this year, I highlighted in Cincinnati, Ohio, how we're getting creative to chase down those that were willing to do harm to our citizens. Not just
Joo,
by striking
pistä
at
mulle
the
vaikka
heart
viestin.
of the fentanyl producers, but the fentanyl precursor companies in China. And we indicted
Kirjoitan
for the
varmaan
first time
huomenna
multiple
sitten
companies and
Janista.
individuals, not just in America, but in
Katso,
mainland
miten se
China,
epos
that are
päättyy ensin,
producing
ennen kuin
the
siitä
ingredients that
kirjoittaa.
produce and make fentanyl that kill our children. And we are going to keep going. Counterterrorism work,
Thank
cyber
you.
attacks, and foreign adversaries are something the FBI must never sleep on, and we are not sleeping. In the counterintelligence space alone, this year, year to date, 30% increase in counterintelligence arrests from the DPRK, Russia, Iran, and China. And I want the American people to know, in this setting, there's a lot of work that the brave men and women in the FBI are doing we just can't get into, but they don't stop. Our cyber threats, ransomware attacks, those harming our children online. We have nearly a 20% increase in indictments arrests in 7 months alone this year. We're going after those that harm our malware, infrastructure systems, telecom systems, and energy structure. Combating SALT and Vault typhoons are just a little bit of the examples we're doing. Maybe most importantly, under the counterterrorism and domestic terrorism umbrella, are nihilist, violent extremists, and those that label themselves 764, who wish to go online and convince children to maim and mutilate themselves and commit suicide.
Mä kirjoitin tästä
And we are
764
producing record
jengistä.
numbers
Tää on joku pedofiilirinki, jota johdetaan tyyliin jostain Iranista tai jotain. Ja niiden tarkoitus on vain länsimaissa groomata lapsia netissä.
of arrest under that umbrella organization. We even stopped an individual in the 764 network who wanted to conspire to kill an adolescent girl. He is now in custody. Transparency remains one of my main priorities at the FBI. This is what I've done in my 7 months at the helm. We've produced more than 33,000 pages of documents to Congress to a variety of committees, including, I believe, 7,500 to this committee alone, if memory serves me correct. To put the 33,000 in perspective, my predecessor in 7 years produced 13,000 pages in total to the United States Congress. His predecessor in 4 years produced 3,000 pages in total. I repeat, I have produced 33,000 pages in 7 years to this Congress and will continue to do so. I'm dedicated to restoring the trust and the mission and the integrity of the FBI, and we cannot do so without congressional oversight, and I promise you I will continue to do so. On the Epstein case, the original sin on the Epstein case was how it was handled by Mr. Acosta when he first brought the case in 2006, 7, and 8. The original case had a very limited search warrant, had a very limited search window, had a very limited investigative window. I was not there when those search warrants and that investigation was launched. I would not have done it that way. They were limited to only 3 to 4 years of investigations from 97 to approximately 2001 and 2002 to 2005. Mr. Acosta allowed Mr. Epstein to enter into a plea agreement where he served weekend jails for trafficking minor women. He also was allowed to leave jail to go home on the weekends. Plus, he allowed a non-prosecution agreement to be signed as part of that plea deal, prohibiting future investigations from that prosecution and from that evidence, and prohibiting the collection of further material. That is the original sin. We are working with Congress to produce more than any administration ever has material on Epstein. And I welcome the challenge to tell us that we are not being as transparent as the law allows. We even went to court and asked the judges to lift those prosecutorial agreements and to lift those court order seals, and they denied us 3 times. Congress is welcome to do the same and join the fight. And I'd lastly like to focus on operation that the president led in D.C. Because of this, we are taking this fight in D.C. to every single city across the country. 2,100 arrests in the last month alone. D.C. has seen a 60% decrease in gun crimes, 75% decrease in carjackings.
Tästä ei hirveästi ole puhuttu myös Suomenkaan lehdistössä, että Washington DC on tällä hetkellä kokonaan tyyli armeijan valloittama. Että siellä kadulla pyörii armeijan tyyppejä ja sitten siellä ei ole nyt ollut hirveästi mitään katuväkivaltaa tai raiskauksia tai ammuskeluja tai mitään muutakaan. Ja sitten oli joku tilasto, että nyt niinku ensimmäistä kertaa moneen 10 vuoteen ei ole tyyliin parissa viikossa kuollut mustaa miestä jengiväkivallassa. Sinänsä positiivista, mutta sit voi miettiä, että tuntuuhan se vähän militaristiselta ja militaristisesti, niin, aika totalitaristista. Sori, mun OCD toimii tänään. Et miksei ne voi vaan olla ihan normaaleja ilman, että tarvitsee sinne kansalliskaarti rynnäkkökiväärien kanssa kaduille. En mä halua asua missään, missä tuolla ulkona heilua armeija tyyppejä. Mun pitää olla koko ajan silleen täysin kunnollinen kansalainen. Toisaalta ihan kiva, että kukaan ei ammukaan tai ryöstä kadulla. Miten se nyt ottaa?
3% decrease in homicide in our nation's capital, and rightly so. We're bringing that fight to the streets of America. I want to thank you for your support, and I'm proud to be the director that leads this FBI into a new headquarters building that they've needed for decades, saving the taxpayer $3.5 billion and also providing our workforce a safe environment. If you don't know the calamity that is the Hoover Building, I invite each and every one of you to walk around. I'll give you a tour myself, and you can see where the cement falls on the heads of our employees that is only to be saved by netting. Just to give you an example. Thank you for support to our mission. And I do want to highlight one thing about DC. It's because the FBI gathered sources and evidence that we were able to, through our source network, identify the horrific murder of the DC intern Eric Tarpinian. And I've spoken to his family, and we are working to bring them justice. And Mr. Chairman, in my 16 years, now my 17 years of government service, if anyone has any questions about my service, bring it on.
Thank you, Director. We will now proceed under the 5-minute rule. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Ison.
Director, delighted to have you here. You are a breath of fresh air. As you outlined, and I won't repeat it, the accomplishments, you did so with the same resources as your predecessor, roughly. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And so how much of that has to do with taking people out of the backside of the FBI and moving them into the field, into doing the job for which we primarily pay the FBI?
That's exactly what we needed done. 1/3 of the FBI's workforce resided in the National Capital Region before I got there. 1/3 of the crimes do not happen in Washington, D.C.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. So 1,000 personnel of the FBI were deployed across this country on a permanent basis, and every single state in this union is getting a plus up, not a reduction, a plus up of 1811s of intel analysts and support staff. And that is why the crime rates are going down in record numbers.
Thank you for doing that.
Miten paljon se voi vaikuttaa, jos sulla on 1000 FBI-agenttia, ja sä lähetät ne 50 eri osavaltioon? Puhutaan kumminkin aika isosta maasta, että kuinka paljon se voi oikeasti vaikuttaa siihen, että rikollisuus tippuu, vai johtuuko se siitä, että kun FBI-tyypit tulee paikalle, niin paikalliset poliisilaitokset ja ynnä muut rupeaa toimimaan tehokkaammin näyttääkseen, että hei, me ollaan kunnollisia, vai mistä tämä johtuu? Tuskinpa silleen, että jos ei ole 1000 FBI-agenttia 50 osavaltioon, niin eihän ne nyt voi olla silleen, tehdä tuhansia pidätyksiä, 20 äijää. Ja nehän voi ihan hyvin väärentää vaan kaikki tulokset, mitä niillä on. Toikin silleen, että joo, että viime direktööri teki joku 3000 sivua jotain todistusaineistoa senaatille, ja hän on tehnyt 10-kertaisesti sen, niin sekin vaikuttaa vähän oudolta, että varsinkin samat resurssit, sama budjetti, sama henkilöstö. En tiedä, kuka puhuu paskaa. No musta tuntuu, että pelkästään se FBI paikalla olla saattaa myös motivoida tai pelotella tekemään työnsä tehokkaammin tai heitellä ihmisiä, joita on aiemmin suojellut bussin alle tai muuta vastaavaa, että ei jää itse kiinni. Eikä sivumäärät niin, totta kai ei se kerro mitään. Se voi olla vain jotain Loren Ipsumia tai täytesanoja siellä. Sä voit tuottaa ihan mitä vaan, se voit olla kunnon Kiina. Tehdä mitä vaan tilastoja ja papereita, ei sekään kerro mitään. Mielestäni tää Patel ei ole. Tää on vähän outo. Tää on vähän outo case.
And it's perhaps the hardest thing for a bureaucrat to do is to lower the head count around them that support them, and I appreciate your willingness to do it different than your predecessor. A lot of what you covered earlier was the find, the discovery, and then the prosecution that is done by the DOJ. But I want to talk a little bit about the prevent side.
On the Charlie assassination, sir?
No, on all of these. Okay, for example, and I'll bring it up before the Democrats bring it up, January 6th. January 6th, we now know, because of your find, that in fact there were people involved who were not just observers but participants who in fact, it's been alleged, and I personally believe, in fact, were part of promoting, perhaps even the one woman who died, encouraging her to walk through a door that led to her death. When you see that kind of activity, and you know it was done under predecessors with full knowledge, whether it's January 6th, where embedded people crossed the line, or any other activity, including obviously the Russian hoax that we're now dealing with up in, front and center. My question to you is, what can you or others do to prevent it from occurring again? Not on your watch, but on future watches. How can we know that this won't happen again the moment you leave the FBI?
It's simple. What I'm doing through our leadership cadre is having FBI agents do what they were trained to do, not what they were not trained to do, not put them in situations that both harm them and the public. We're also utilizing our SORT networks and prioritizing the threat structure to go after the narco traffickers, the counterterrorism people, the counterintelligence threats, and the cyber threats. That's what they were trained to do, and that's what we're letting them do.
One major question I have, after decades of doing this, on our side of it, both the chairman, myself, and others, both at oversight and here, have seen that the FBI and the Department of Justice hide behind non-statutory practices. Now, you've changed the interpretation of many of those practices. That's why we're getting the discovery that was previously withheld. How do we work together to make sure that we never again have false walls, non-statutory walls that say the Department of Justice has...
Katsotaan tää nyt vielä nopea. Tällä hetkellä tää on nyt livenä.
I think it's still fresh on many people's minds. I want to congratulate you and Utah law enforcement.
Oli tullut 18 tuntia sitten, että se Charlie Kirkin ampuja on nyt saanut syytteet. Siitä on uutinen, jos katsottaisiin sitä tässä nyt vielä nopea. Noniin, mä tappas hyr. Come on, buddy. Kiitos, YouTube.
Can appoint an attorney to represent you. I have reviewed your declaration of financial status and find that you are indigent. I'm provisionally appointing a Rule 8 qualified attorney to represent you on your case, Mr. Robinson.
Along with the filing of their appearance of counsel, the assigned attorneys must file declarations with the court that outline their qualifications under Rule 8 and in Rule 8C. Rule 8B and Rule 8C for counsel appointment in a case where death may be a sentencing option. I'm ordering that those declarations be filed prior to the next hearing date, which is set for September 29th at 10 a.m. Mr. Robinson, I also wish to inform you of your right against self-incrimination. Anything that you say in court today could be used against you, and we want to protect your constitutional rights. Mr. Robinson, at this time, you will remain in custody without bail. Mr. Skortis, is there any other points that you wish to address?
No, thank you very much.
Turning to the state.
Yes, Your Honor. Chad Grunander for the state. I'm also joined, and they're listed as attendees, Ryan McBride, Lauren Hunt, David Sturgill, and Chris Ballard. We are the trial team on this case. I do have a few points I'd like to bring up with Your Honor. We have filed a pretrial protective order.
Sillä on aika pakkopaita päällä. Toi näyttää tää luotiliivit.
We would ask the court to review that. It should be in your queue, Your Honor, and sign that.
Thank you. I have reviewed the pretrial protective order and will be issuing this pretrial protective order in favor of Erica Kirk. Is there any other business that we need to address today, counsel?
Just for the court's information, we did file just recently, within the last few minutes, a notice of intent to seek the death penalty that was filed by Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray. So that should be in the court's file. Lastly, I would just indicate to the court and to, at this point, Mr. Robinson, that we are prepared to collect all of the discovery in this matter and get that turned over to the defense as soon as possible. Rule 16 requires us to provide what we have relied on in charging the information and bringing these charges within 5 days once it's requested. So that'll be prepared to disseminate to the defense as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Gruander. Mr. Robinson, and what I also want to do is you have the...
Vain yksi kolmesta osavaltiosta, jossa on ammuttu ihan kiväärillä vaan seinään. Rikollisia saunan taakse. Joo. Aika paha.
Right to have the charges read that you stand charged of, and I wish to read those to you at this time.
Poliisit ampuu sen kuoliaksi kohta.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson, for count 1, aggravated murder, a capital felony in violation of Utah Code annotated 76-5-202, in that on September 10th, 2025, in Utah County, the defendant, Tyler James Robinson, intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Charlie Kirk under the following circumstances. The defendant knowingly created a great risk of death to another individual other than Charlie Kirk and the defendant. Notice conviction of this offense may carry the death penalty or pursuant to Utah Code 76-3-207.7, a mandatory term of imprisonment for life without parole or an indeterminate term of not less than 25 years. That may be for life.
Mä oon nyt messissä tässä.
Victim targeting enhancement in violation of Utah Code annotated 76-3-203.14 sub 2. Tyler James Robinson intentionally selected Charlie Kirk because of Tyler James Robinson's belief or perception regarding Charlie Kirk's political expression. Notice if the trier of fact finds beyond a reasonable doubt that the victim targeting enhancement applies, the sentencing judge or the Board of Pardons and Parole shall consider the defendant's selection of the victim as an aggravating factor. Violent offense committed in the presence of a child aggravating factor, the sentencing judge or the Board of Pardons and Parole shall consider as an aggravating factor in their deliberations that the defendant committed a violent criminal offense. First, the defendant discharged Robinson intentionally selected Charlie Kirk because Tyler James Robinson's belief or perception regarding Charlie Kirk's political victim as in the presence of Tyler James Robinson with intent to hinder, delay, or prevent the investigation, apprehension felony. Count 4, obstruction of justice, a second-degree felony in violation of Utah Code 76-8-306, felony in violation of Utah Code annotated 76-8-508, in that on or about September 10th, 2025 in Utah County, the defendant, Tyler James Robinson, believed that an official proceeding or to stay silent if the police questioned the roommate. Belief or perception regarding Charlie Kirk's political expression. That concludes reading the information. Mr. Robinson, this case is set for September 29th at 10 a.m. It will be a waiver hearing, and I will be the judge assigned to this case. Mr. Robinson, I invite you to join us at that time.
On oikeudenkäyntiä.
No, yeah, we'll have counsel appointed by then. Thank you.
Mr. Gruander, anything further?
One item, just for clarification, Your Honor, the hearing on the 29th, is that in person or WebEx?
Thank you. That is a great question. It will be via WebEx.
Okay. Thank you, Judge.
All right. I want to thank all parties for being here, and this concludes this hearing at this time. Court is in recess.
Ei niinku paikan päällä.
Well, that right there is Charlie Kirk's alleged killer, Tyler Robinson, who has just appeared in court for the first time since September 10 when Charlie...
Jaa. Katsotaan, miten Patelilla menee. Tää on vielä livenä.
How do you know that?
because that information would have been brought to light by multiple administrations and FBI investigators over the course of the last 20 years.
Well, you know what? That's just not true, because no one knew about the creepy birthday message that Donald Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein until the Wall Street Journal
Creepy birthday
disclosed
message.
it, and
Oota, mä
all of
katson,
a
jos mä
sudden,
löydän sen.
the Epstein estate provides it to Congress.
Well,
So
you
certainly, you weren't there at the search. You don't know what Epstein may or may not have done with those photographs even prior to the search. Maybe someone has it. Maybe the Epstein estate has it.
You raise a great point.
So I'm going to ask you, have you asked to talk to Michael Wolff?
You raise a great point. I haven't personally asked to talk to
Has the
Michael
FBI
Wolff,
asked?
but
you
the
to interview Michael Wolff?
FBI, I'll get back to you.
Tässä on se
if he has
kuva.
So
specifically
Michael
asked
has
ever.
about 100
Mistä nää
hours
puhuu
of testimony of
kirjasta,
Epstein. Wouldn't it be good
että olisi
for
kuulemma
FBI to
ollut
interview Michael Wolff?
I'm not saying they haven't, I just don't know.
Donald Trump olisi kuulemma
Subpoena
lähettänyt
the
tämän
tapes
Jeffrey
that Michael
Epsteinille.
Wolff has conducted of Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't know.
Ja sitten tässä lopussa lukee, että a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday. And may every day be another wonderful secret. Yikes. Onks tää totta? En tiedä. Tää on se creepy birthday message, mistä puhuu.
Jeffrey Epstein has a voluminous amount of information that they have not released before.
Okay, so that's great. So wouldn't it be great if FBI subpoenaed the estate of Jeffrey Epstein for all that information?
The estate is under no obligation to provide that material, even pursuant to a subpoena. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's just false.
Okay.
That's just false. You're the frickin' FBI. You can subpoena the information.
You're the
You
freaking
better do
FBI.
that. I'd like to move
literally
on.
not how it works.
I'm going to move on now and talk about Epstein's client list.
Oh.
You confirmed that exists. Attorney General Pam Bondi confirmed earlier this year that exists. So I just want to ask you a simple question. Is Prince Andrew on Epstein's client list?
The material related to Prince Andrew has been made public.
Is Prince Andrew on the client list?
We have released the index of names
All right,
that were in Jeffrey Epstein's.
Is Donald Trump on Epstein's client list?
The index has been released, and the index.
Is Donald Trump on Epstein's client list?
America, there's a huge red flag. The FBI director could not answer
Gentlemen.
whether Donald Trump was on Epstein's
Gentleman's time
client
has
list.
expired.
I
Chair
yield
now
back.
recognizes the gentleman from Virginia.
Se ei sanonut
Thank you, Mr.
ei.
Chairman. I want to thank the director for being here and
Se ei sanonut joo.
over the last several months, removing the taint of partisanship that has infected the intelligence community over the past several years under the last administration, under the last several directors, standing up for law enforcement.
Very
standing up for the
suspicious.
women who work in your agency. But to set the record straight, we have to correct the record. And the record, early days of the first Trump administration saw a dramatic spike in news stories that contained sensitive and sometimes classified details about the FBI's bogus Russia probe, about a leak a day. It's unacceptable that senior FBI officials coordinated to leak classified information to try and harm President Trump. Documents produced to the committee in August of this year revealed that the FBI interviewed a former Intelligence Committee staffer who gave details on a systematic process through which leaks of classified information were affected by then Chairman, now Senator Adam Schiff. Were these findings escalated within the Bureau's chain of command, and if so, to what level?
Sorry, were the findings escalated?
Were these findings that were given to us escalated within the Bureau's chain of command, and if so, what level? Did you receive this information?
That entire matter is currently under investigation by the people at the FBI that handle leaks of classified information.
All right, it's good to know that there is an ongoing investigation. Can you tell me whether these leaks...
Tämä koko homma on niin hämärä. Ei tässä ole mitään selvää. Mutta onhan se nyt aika ilmiselvä, että nämä oli kavereita. Näistä on ihan satoja kuvia yhdessä.
Detrimental to any work the FBI is doing.
Now, former Director James Comey testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee that he had never been an anonymous source, nor authorized anyone to be an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation. Was Comey's testimony true?
In reference to Director Comey, I'm very limited in what I can say because of what the current status of those matters are with the FBI and the Department of Justice. When I am able to make those public, I will.
Can you tell me if there's an ongoing investigation there?
Again, without identifying any individuals related to the information you're generally speaking about, there is an ongoing matter that has been under review by the Department and the FBI for some time.
because we know that the documents that we received last month revealed that former Director Comey used Columbia University law professor as a conduit to leak stories to the media that contained classified information. Let me move on to the way that the FISA process was weaponized by past directors. Prior to your confirmation, you raised concerns about government misuse of FISA, including Section 702, stating that FISA was in need of major reform. Specifically, you highlighted that the Fisk report that the FBI had conducted 278,000 improper searches of the FISA database. Do you remain concerned about governmental abuse of FISA in Section 702?
I'm always concerned, but what we've done since I became FBI director is implement new audit systems. We are nearing 100% review of the 702 query system that you are specifically referring to, and we've also eliminated anyone that has ever touched that database that has in any way made a mistake, whether intentional or not, and we have also identified a system in which those going forward who misuse the 702 system, they don't get 2 strikes. They get 1 and you're done.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned you're continuing to audit because, as you know, in May, the New York Times reported you closed the FBI's Office of Internal Auditing. Can you explain why you decided to close this office?
Yeah, because under the new restructuring of the FBI, to save resources, there were 2 different places doing the exact same thing. We have a specific division dedicated to audits. I didn't need another audit system doing the audits again. And so we folded some of those folks with their expertise into our specific division and then took the rest of those folks and are moving them out across the country.
Under previous FBI leadership,
And it's time for
FBI agents were found to have lied to
lefties.
the Fisk.
No niin, ja tästä ei
Violations of the querying standards in light of
nää
past
puhutaan
violations
höpö,
for
niin
action.
katsotaan viimeisin Lefties Losingit Rita Panailta. Mieluummin. Otetaanpas nämä perpat kuvat täältä nyt pois. Miten YouTube?
And it's time for Lefties Losing It. Let's start with some weapon-grade gaslighting from alleged comic Jimmy Kimmel. Here is the far-left purveyor of late-night disinformation engaging in some more disinformation, this time about his ideological bedfellow Tyler Robinson.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Yes, I'm sure the far-left loser moaning about supposed fascists and obsessed with trans activism with a trans boyfriend is a closet Republican, according to Kimmel.
With a trans boyfriend on varmaan ihan tosi republikaani ollut se ampujakko on tommonen tykännyt vähän pukeutua eläimeksi ja seurasta transihmisen kanssa kuulostaa tosi republikaanilta, kuulostaa juuri siltä kuulostaa aika Jani Kokolta, jos joltain kuulostaa.
I mean, let's just disregard officials telling us what his ideology is and let's disregard the alleged killer's own words. But Jimmy Kimmel wasn't done yet. He even mocked President Trump's grief for Charlie. Now, President Trump loved Charlie Kirk. Those close to him say he saw him as another son. But this is what Jimmy Kimmel had to say.
This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
How a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish. You know what? I'd forgive the callous, hateful miscreant if he was just a little bit funny. He is supposed to be a comic. Now, this next gal is supposed to be some sort of a model. She was a contestant on a show called America's Next Top Model.
About Charlie Kirk.
Kukaan ei tiedä motivaatiota.
You like terrorism?
You like terrorism?
Eye for an eye. I think the only thing that went wrong that day was that Trump wasn't standing behind him getting a secondhand bullet.
Model. She's as ugly on the inside as she is on the outside.
Näitä on tuhansia näitä videot, missä vasurit on ihan tosissaan sille. No niin, kuka seuraava? Kenet mä ammuttaa seuraavaksi? Nyt te saatte, olette ansainnut tämän kaikesta ja vihapuheestanne. Näitä on tuhansia videoita. Suomessa satoja, kautta maailman tuhansia, kymmeniä tuhansia. mikä on se tarve mennä nettiin kuvaamaan itsestäsi videoa, missä sä esiinnyt ihan täytänä psykopaattisena, empatiakyvyttömänä terroristina, eikä toivottaa kaikille muillekin sitä samaa. Mikä saa ihmiset käyttäytymään tällä tavalla? Pidä vaan mielipiteet itselläsi.
Hill, the former ESPN anchor, the race-baiting simpleton, who continues to lie and engage in deliberate misinformation. Listen to what she says about the man charged with murdering Charlie.
In the wake of Charlie's murder, there was an incredible amount of angry discourse from the right, blaming the Democrats, blaming liberals, saying, you're the reason this happened.
Angry discourse. Angry discourse. Jos joku on aidosti vihainen jostain tapahtumasta, tuntee aitoja tunteita, että sua on tallottu ihan tarpeeksi, sua on mustamaalattu ja sua on haukuttu ihan tarpeeksi, sä oot silleen, nyt riittää. Ja sit sut vielä ammutaan siitä. Niin se oli sen sun oman vihaisen retoriikkasi angry discourse, joka aiheutti sen, että sua ammutaan kurkkuun suoraan, suu kiinni, suu suppuu. Sananvapauden ideaalit toteutuu tosi paljon, kun sä kannatat vaan samanmielisten sananvapautta. Erimieliset pitää ampua.
Only to find out, surprise, 22-year-old white dude, love guns, raised by two parents, lived in a good home, dad is a minister, also a sheriff. Didn't check any of them boxes y'all thought he would check, did he?
Well, he checked the boxes I expected him to check, Jamal. He is a far-left, trans activist lunatic who regurgitates the same BS you do. He claims...
Siis ihan oikeasti kansainvälisissä ulkomaalaisuutissa sanotaan ihan suoraan, että se oli transaktivisti, se oli äärivasemmistolainen, se oli radikalisoitunut netissä nimenomaan tähän samaan radikalismiin, mitä oikeasti on vallannut jo Suomen lehdistöön. Meidän lehdistö on jo tätä samaa ilmiötä ja radikalismia kokonaisuudessa, ja sen takia se ei käsittele sitä tälleen yhtä kriittisesti. Jos sä katsot jotain muiden maiden uutisia ja juontajia ja vaikuttajia ja kirjoittajia ja bloggaajia ja somettajia ynnä muuta, tämä on niin yleistä, tämä on ihan valtavirtaa, että kaikki tietää, että se oli joku furrituri transaktivisti vassari, joka nimenomaan ampui Charlie Kirkia sen takia, koska Charlie Kirk edusti kaikkia vastakkaista, mitä hän oli poliittisesti. Mutta Suomessa Jani Kokko tulee selittämään samaa höpöhöpöä, mitä jotkut MT-potilaat TikTokissa, hän on Yhdysvaltain asiantuntija. Yleisradio selittää samaa kuin MT-potilaat TikTokissa. Hyvin menee Suomi.
Charlie was spreading hate because the left called telling the truth hateful. His dad wasn't a sheriff, but he did appear to come from a decent family. It just shows that coming from a decent, God-fearing family isn't enough to inoculate a sick mind from toxic leftist indoctrination. And did Jamel really blame Republicans, conservatives for angry discourse? I mean, how dare we be angry that a brilliant young man was murdered in front of his children? How dare we call out those celebrating this sickening act of domestic terrorism? And be on guard for those who claim that this isn't a left or right issue, that this isn't political, that there isn't a clear motive. Those are lies, and we're not putting up with lies. We are not tolerating the left's bold-faced lies and gaslighting, including this from CBS.
5 days after Charlie Kirk's murder, the shooter's motive remains elusive. No writings left behind, vague secondhand testimony. That uncertainty and the risk of drawing sweeping conclusions suggests the murder may share similarities with recent violence not driven by an obvious political ideology.
No clear ideology, except Tyler Robinson told us precisely what his ideology is and why he targeted Charlie Kirk. There is zero mystery about the motives of Tyler Robinson or his political ideology. The only question is, who else may have been involved? Now let's hear from The View. Here is Whoopi Goldberg offering some sober analysis. She looks almost disappointed that Charlie's message will only grow stronger. Remember, it was just a few years ago that Whoopi was forced to apologise to Turning Point USA for falsely linking Charlie's movement to neo-Nazis. The ladies of The View have done plenty to incite the demented left.
And what assassins should always remember is just because you take somebody out doesn't mean the message is going to stop. And it's important to keep that in mind.
Now, we've had plenty of examples of instant karma this week as hate-filled individuals have got their comeuppance for celebrating a great man's assassination. And here is another
Tämä on jotenkin niin
example. This
ironista,
young
että
man...
sama porukka, joka huusi vuosia jotain ihme vihapuhetta vastaan, on sama porukka, joka harrastaa stokastista terrorismia, mustamaalaa joukkona ja sensuroi ja ilmiantaa ja ahdistelee ja vainoaa, kunnes joku hullu menee tappamaan kohteen. Ja sitten vielä kaupan päälle mustamaalla tähän täysillä. Sama porukka, joka puhuu vuosia jotain epämääräistä vihapuhetta vastaan ja vaati kaikenlaisia lakeja ja rajoituksia sananvapauteen, on se sama porukka, joka lopuksi tulee vielä ampumaan sua päähän sananvapaudesta. Sama porukka, joka selittää jostain vihapuheesta, on ne oikeat vihapuhujat. Sama porukka, jotka ampuu sua päähän, on ne, jotka selittää, että sä oot se vihapuhuja. Siis tää on ihan älytöntä. Sama porukka, joka huusi vuosia 4. valtakunnasta ja ikkunalauteen alla marsivista natseista, on täysillä mukana natsi-intifadassa viimeiset 2 vuotta juutalaisia vastaan. Ei, kaikki menee ihan käänteisesti.
And thought it was funny to turn up to a memorial at Texas State University and do this.
Minä katson ihan ylpeät siitä. Kaikki vaan kaulaa. Kaikkia vaan kaulaa.
Incredible how tolerant the crowd there is of those antics, but he did get a dose of instant karma. Shortly after that incident, he was identified and promptly expelled from the university. And I don't feel one bit sorry for him. You want to engage in that type of cruelty, mocking not just the murdered, but those grieving his loss. You deserve to get expelled. Now let's hear from ABC talking about
ja nyt ne on silleen, Tämä on kunnon maalittamista, kun ne nyt käyttää somea siihen, ne valittaa meidän työnantajille siitä, että me toivotetaan niille kuolemaa. Ne valittaa meidän työnantajille siitä, että me pilkataan ja halutaan, että nekin kuolee. Samat tyypit, jotka on vuosikymmeniä pienimmästäkin kriittisestä sanasta ottanut jokaisen muun työnantajan yhteyttä ja mustamaalannut ihan täysillä ja yrittänyt pilata toisten elämät. Itkee nyt samasta, kun itse aiheellisesti näyttäytyy hyvin vaaralliselta terroristilta videolla, ja sitten tulee potkituksi joko koulusta tai työpaikasta tai mistä lienee, sitten sama porukka, joka on vuosikymmeniä netissä maalittanut, haukkunut, mustamaalannut toisia ihmisiä vapaasti, on nyt se sama porukka, joka sanoo, että meitä maalitetaan. Älä tue terrorismia. Älä toivota ihmiselle kuolemaa. Äläkä yritä sensuroida ihmisiä normaalista sananvapaudesta. Mitä ihmettä ei oikeasti. Äläkä varsinkaan murhaa porukkaa. Tämä on niin
messages of this alleged killer. Do you think they reflected on how his language echoed that of mainstream leftist figures from the media and the activist class and the Democrats? No. Instead, they were marveling at how touching it all was.
What was on it, but also it was very touching in a way that I think many of us didn't expect. A very intimate portrait into this relationship between the suspect.
So touching, so intimate. Ensin ne kieltää sen, että se on vasemmistolainen. Siinä keksii, että se on kaikkea muuta kuin vasemmistolainen. Sitten kun ei enää pysty kieltämään sitä, että etteikö se on vasemmistolainen, niin sit alkaa aina se, että no, ehkä se olikin hyvä juttu. Ehkä se olikin hyvä äijä. Ehkä se olikin vaan intiimi, tämmönen hieno perspektiivi tältä äijältä. Se on aina sama juttu. Kiellä. Ja sitten kun sä et pysty enää kieltämään, niin rupea selittämään, että ei kun se on sittenkin hyvä juttu, että ei se ollutkaan paha juttu. No miksi sä alun perin sit kielsit kaiken?
Roommate and the suspect himself, with him repeatedly calling his roommate who is transitioning, calling him my love, and I want to protect.
He was calling his roommate my love. Eli nää nyt esittää, että kun hän on suhteessa transihmisen kanssa, ja hän on itsekin, kun on transaktivisti vasemmistolainen, niin sekin tässä nyt niin kuin, ei hän ole ollut senkaan suhteessa tai mitään, vaan hän vaan kutsuu omaa kämppistään rakkaakseni. Oli vaan sen kämppissä, se vaan ihan läpällä sanoa, että my love. Joo, nämä on niin... Makes perfect sense.
So it was this duality of someone who the attorney said...
Ei suinkaan relationship with a trans person. Duality of roommates.
not only jeopardized the life of Charlie Kirk and the crowd, but was doing it in front of children, which is one of the aggravating circumstances of this case. And on the other hand, he was, speaking so lovingly about his partner.
Speaking so lovingly about his partner. Very lovingly.
And it's
very lovingly of this partner. Ei jumalauta. Lefty is losing it. Mitä mä voin sanoa tähän? Tää on niin...
Controversial Senator Fatima Payman has posted a highly offensive clip about Charlie Kirk, which she's already tried to clarify after an immediate...
Australian muslimit on iloisia Charlie Kirkin kuolemasta.
So what do I think about Charlie Kirk? And obviously his assassination? I think he was a pretty awful person.
It's a kebab awful person. Lopeta toi maiskuttaminen.
And he doesn't deserve all the recognition he's getting. It would have been best to not have him assassinated and for him to remain a footnote in the Trumpian era of the United States. Yeah, Charlie Kirk got shot and he's R.I.P. Whatever you want R.I.P. to stand for.
Oh, miksi? Tää on niin klisee, että sä oot jossain TikTokissa. Sun viereinen nimi on joku fucking kebab-kauppa. Siis hijabinainen maiskuttelemassa ja se ei. Tää on niin absurdia. Sitten on tulee, ihan hyvä, että se on mut ai voi internet.
Some people will say it's not peace, so fill in the blanks, people. Fill in the blanks.
It's just disgraceful. Joining me now is my panel, former Liberal Senator Holly Hughes and IPA Senior Fellow Adam Crichton.
Hello.
Now, she's now issued a statement trying to justify her horrible remarks. She says she extends sympathies to Charlie Kirk's young family. She condemns all form of political violence. But Holly, the issue is that it's been 6 days since he was killed. Why is she talking about him? Why is she... I don't even know what she means by RIP, but I can imagine it's something very offensive.
I don't know what the P is. I've actually been trying to think what the P is that she's referring to, other than peace.
What could it be? What could it be? Mikäkään se P on? Jos ei se ole peace, rest in peace, niin mikäkään se voi olla? Mikäkään se voi olla? Rest in peace, jos ei se ole rest in peace, niin I don't know. Tämä on sama juttu, kun emme tiedä sen motiiveja, emme vaan osaa yhdistää näitä lankoja. Se on aina kun punavihreät jää kiinni, ne esittää tyhmää. Se on aina, joka kerta, jos punavihreä jää kiinni, hän esittää tyhmää. Ja sitten joka antaa anteeksi, koska kaikki tietää, että punavihreät on idiootteja. Joten ne pelaa aina tätä samaa. Okei, mutta sitten me esitetään idiootteja. Sitten me päästään kaikesta, kun koira vereästä, me ollaan idiootteja. Ei ne ole tyhmiä, ne on vaan pahoja. Ne ei oikeasti tyhmiä, ne on vaan pahoja.
Parliament.
This is now the second parliamentarian who's been embroiled from the Australian Parliament in either liking a post or now making a post that is almost condoning the assassination of Charlie Kirk or political violence in any of its form. But what I did note, she said, I was hoping Charlie Kirk would just be a footnote to Trumpian politics. Well, I have no doubt Fatima Payman will be lucky to make a footnote. The only thing she will be probably ever remembered for is ratting on the ALP, because we know how much they embrace that sort of behaviour. But why she felt that was necessary, read the room, people. Have a look what's happened everywhere. And we can see, you know, in the United States, and I don't know, but I assume it's going to happen elsewhere, people are being fired for the way that they celebrated his assassination. And then she goes and behaves this way. Well, let's just hope the Australian people fire her at the next election.
Yeah, let's hope that indeed. Adam, I mean, the point here is that Charlie Kirk engaged in respectful debate. He wouldn't have ever, you know, mocked someone or made an off-colour joke about them after their death.
Ja siis mä en tajua sitä, että miksi vasemmistolainen punavihreä niin kuin muslimikin varaa itselleen sen oikeuden, että mulle pitää puhua mahdollisimman kunnioitettavasti, mun kaikkia tunteita pitää ottaa huomioon, mun keksityt pronominit pitää ottaa huomioon, mun sukupuoli, joka ei ole edes totta, vaan päinvastoin mitä ihminen tulkitsee, pitää ottaa huomioon. Kaikki nämä pitää ottaa huomioon, muuten sä oot ihan hemmetin huono ihminen. Mutta samaan aikaan minä, vasemmistolainen, punavihreä, muslimi, saan sanoa ihan mitä vaan ja musta maalata ja hakata ja murhata, kenet minua huvittaa. Se on aina sama juttu. Be kind.
No, that is certainly true, but I can also inform you, ladies, that the word for pee is another word for urine, so certainly in very poor taste, quite grotesque comments, very contemptible, and it's very sad that we have senators elected to the Senate like this. She should be judged by civil society, and she will be, it seems.
No, senaattori on... Siis lopettakaa oikeasti, lopettakaa tää pelleily. Tää on ihan pelleilyä. Melbourne, hei.
That she is already backtracking, as she should. But just a general point, we have to remember that one of the things that Charlie Kirk very much stood for was free speech, and even if it was horrible speech, even if it was in very bad taste, he was very much for it. He didn't support people being cancelled or charged criminally for what they say. So we just have to keep in mind at moments like these that, you know, that people are going to disagree, people are going to be rude and awful, and in a civil society we just have to live with it. But of course, that said, what the Senator said is very disgusting.
No, it is indeed. Now, we're seeing Trump obviously arrived in the UK overnight our time. He's been met with pageantry, royalty,
Donald
carriages,
Trump
processions, gun salutes. The centrepiece of the visit was a banquet in St George's Hall. Both King Charles and President...
Piers, when you're looking at all this, could you give us an idea of how the king is doing? I think he spent the last 2 years battling cancer, and we heard about the treatment, which is never easy.
And
How's
Kate.
he doing?
And Kate, too.
And Kate.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at actually 3 people there who've been in health woes. The king has had cancer, Kate's had cancer, and the Queen has been recovering from sinusitis. She wasn't able to attend a major royal funeral yesterday. So they've all been through different kinds of health problems. Look, the King is in his mid-70s. He's been pretty sick, I think, with the cancer, but he's a remarkably resilient man, like his mother was, like so many of the royals are. And there was absolutely no chance he wasn't going to be there today to lead the charge for the president. And I have to say, I've covered a lot of royal events, a lot of state visits over the years, but for American presidents, other foreign leaders. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite on the scale that's being rolled out here for President Trump. And that is a mark of the respect, I think, that the UK has for the United States. This is really quite exceptional. And I think that, you know, I'd like to just put that on record. They wouldn't even do this for Brian Kilmeade. That's people that come that they have to meet. They have to meet a lot of boring people. But in President Trump, the one thing, whether you like him or not, President Trump, no one's ever called him boring. And I think they New York, I think, and they watched absolutely buzzing with real excitement about having spent quality time with the Queen, because it took him back to that moment he shared with his mother watching the coronation when the Queen was just in her mid-20s. So there's a long history there of Donald Trump with the royals. And I think that King Charles and Queen Camilla and the Princess of Wales, they know that. And I think...
Which was a...
The global dynamic,
Well, first of all, I would say I've been really struck just driving through central London today and by the scenes in Windsor about the southern border have increased. So the gangs haven't been smashed. The record numbers of migrants coming in illegally, that has been smashed, those records. So that's a big concern for people, as is housing, them thinking, leader. So there's a lot of turmoil in the UK, and a lot of people are saying to me, you know, even if they don't like Trump personally, I do, but not everybody does. But they're saying even if you don't like him personally, it's hard to disagree with a leader who believes in a strong border, who believes in tackling crime aggressively, who believes in fewer foreign wars, who believes in paying less taxes and so on. And I think that people are looking at it and saying, yeah, we could do with a bit of Trumpism here.
Well, Piers, that's been the most fascinating
By the way, look
thing.
at this.
I know, it's beautiful.
I feel like I'm watching a movie from the 1700s.
Never seen anything like this before. Obviously, a great honor for the president. Piers, you talk about the politics domestically there in the
Tässä
UK.
oli kanssa,
and Starmer.
no ei tämä ole sen mielenkiintoisempi, että niillä on vaan ollut tämmöinen paraati tuolla ja Trump on tullut käymään. Sitten toinen on Douglas Murray oli kommentoinut just sitä, että miksi niistä ei YK, vaan UK brittien mielenosoituksesta on levitetty ihan hirveästi disinformaatiota nyt taas Suomenkin lehdistöön myöten, niin tehdään katsoa vielä se. Kamaa, YouTube.
Joining me now is the author of international bestsellers, including The Strange Death of Europe, The Madness of Crowds, The War on the West, and his latest on democracies and death cults. Douglas Murray, before we dive into today's issues, I last spoke to you just a couple of hours after Charlie Kirk's murder. How do you see his legacy? He was only 31, but the impact he had on politics, on campus culture, and the wider culture was enormous.
Yes, it was. And there's been such an outpouring in the last week almost since his assassination that it just really embeds that fact. The president, Donald Trump, the vice president, J.D. Vance, and many others have been incredibly involved in the aftermath, in the case of all of these people, consoling Charlie Kirk's widow and family and much more, and awarding him posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Perhaps as importantly, there have also, of course, been, I wouldn't say demonstrations, more gatherings around the world, across America, in London, as far afield as South Korea, of people paying tribute to, was fairly often asked.
Yeah.
He wanted to be remembered for his faith, for his Christian faith, is to have to board up their shop windows and so on. No, very far from it. They've been gathering in prayer and in vigil. And that's really been an incredibly moving thing to see.
Now, Douglas, President Donald Trump has arrived in the UK to meet with King Charles. He'll be spending the night at Windsor before meeting Keir Starmer at the Prime Minister's residence.
Donald Trump on tapaamassa Keir Starmerin. Mitäkään tapahtuu? Se ei hirveästi tykkää Starmerista. Se ei hirveästi tiedä edes, kuka Starmer on, mun mielestä. Nana äläri ja jätä kissa rauhoit. No, ne jahtaa kissaa.
This is a historic visit, the first time a US president has had two state visits to the UK while in office. Douglas, there's going to be plenty of pomp and pageantry. There will be further trade talk. What else do you expect to see from this visit? Will President Trump bring up those huge anti-mass immigration protests we've just seen in London?
It's possible that he will. President Trump's been asked about this visit and has stressed that it's really about the king in the royal family. And that's clearly his own passion in accepting this visit, is his passion for the country of his mother's birth and for the United Kingdom, and especially for the monarchy. He has met Keir Starmer, of course, a number of times since coming back into office. It's an uneasy relationship in lots of ways, and you can see that. Keir Starmer's politics really couldn't be further away from those of President Trump. But on the other hand, the UK needs good trade relations with the US. President Trump and the Trump administration has been pretty generous so far in that, in those negotiations. And I would expect it to go smoothly. And I would imagine, given recent events in America, maybe, just maybe, the domestic anti-Trump left in the UK might keep their usual sort of rude protests down. You'll remember that last time President Trump went to the UK, people like the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, tried to make it all about themselves, allowed protesters to, you know, I mean, it was within the law, but I mean, you know, sort of insult the guest of the United Kingdom. I imagine there might be a little bit less of that this time. It's hard to say at the moment.
Well, on those protests across, London, certainly, the crowd number there was enormous. But these protests have been variously described by the media as far-right and extremist, white nationalist. But let's hear from a couple taking part who challenge those narratives.
What's your names? Why are you here today?
I'm Anne. That's Andrew, my husband. We want our children to be
able
to speak without being persecuted or being arrested. We don't want them to have tweets on X and being criminalized for thoughts. I think everybody should be able to speak.
Niin.
And Douglas, let me play you the experience of this next woman, a black woman in a hijab, who attended the march expecting to be abused.
I'm going to the September 13th protest and seeing how many times I get called go back to Africa. Oh no. Oh no.
Oh no.
But let's see what actually happened and what she had to say after.
I went to the Tommy Robinson protest on September 13th and it was fine. I also went alone as well. I met my friend like 2 hours later in central London, but I was by myself and I went straight to the belly of the beast and I saw nothing but peaceful people, respectful people. I was even interviewing them. I asked them.
Susta tuntuu ihan sikaläski nyt.
Olet syönyt ihan liikaa. People, and I knew I shouldn't have been afraid. I was never ever going to be afraid because I grew up with English people. I grew up with white people, and they've been nothing but polite, respectful. That's their culture, you know. Politeness, Britishness, you know. The issue is a lot of minority cultures for them have become the predominant culture in areas of the UK like London, Liverpool, Manchester, Luton, to the point that these towns and cities become unrecognisable.
Douglas, she gets it better than 95% plus of the media.
Yeah, I mean, good for her in one way. I mean, it's sort of absurd that in the country she lives in, she thinks there's a kind of protest like this. Good for her for acknowledging that she was wrong.
Good for her.
Misjudging her countrymen and women. It's an astonishing thing to see this, Rita, because Tommy Robinson's Unite the Kingdom protest gathered a very large number of people in the centre of London, at least 100,000. Probably significantly more than that. It's always hard to say with these protests. Organizers always say they're larger and the police always say they're smaller. But it was a very much more peaceful event than any of the media wanted to admit it might be, or indeed in the end was. There were some arrests, but infinitely fewer than at, say, that great celebration of multicultural, diverse London, the Notting Hill Carnival, where there are always dozens of arrests and stabbings and sexual assaults and so on. The Tommy Robinson Unite the Kingdom event went off peacefully. It went off positively. I watched a relay of what happened from the stage. It wasn't anything like a white supremacist, white nationalist thing. There was a black gospel choir. There were some Maoris doing one of their, the chants and things, and the haka, and it was all very, good-natured. Some of the speakers talked about the things that clearly are worrying. My fellow Brits, I mean, things like, yes, the mass illegal migration, the fact that people who describe themselves as white British are finding themselves to be a minority in every major English city. That's a big one. I mean, that's not like an imaginary fear. That's just something that has actually happened without their asking for it. In fact, asking for it not to happen for generations now. There was a significant expression of concern about the rape gangs in the north of England and indeed across all of England, and much more. But it was all it was very peaceable. And one of the things that's striking about it all, Rita, is not just the misrepresentation of it, but the fact that it would be actually very hard to imagine Keir Starmer, for instance, being able to raise any kind of mobilized, group of people for a positive celebration of Britishness in this way. There were bishops of the Church of England who all came out to condemn the event, but one of the things notable about it was the prevalence of Christianity in it. There was a bishop from a rather minority sect who opened with a prayer, and there were calls for Christian revival.
Tyyli suurin rauhallinen kansanmarssi, kansanliike Iso-Britanniassa se koko historia aikana. Suomen lehdistössä se on vaan natsimarssi.
Vision of the country, for pride in the country and much more. So much of the almost all of the political class, almost all
katsotaanpa mitä se Patel tekee, se on vieläkin siellä livenä roostettuna, niin tullaan takaisin katsomaan mitä sitä tehdään.
It all began, and then it was Mueller, then it was impeachment.
Tää ihan oli jo 3 tuntia tuolla
Jack Smith and Fonnie Willis and Al
grillattavana.
Bragg, you name it. But it all started then, and that's why I think the gentleman from Texas wants to make sure we get all the information there. And I want to go back to when it was changed. We talked about this earlier. I just want to read to you what the CIA officer said to the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Quote, Brennan refused to remove the dossier, and when confronted with the dossier's main flaws, he responded, yes, but doesn't it ring true? So that's what he initially said. And then when he was talking to this committee, he said the CIA was very much opposed to having any reference or inclusion of the Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment.
Jaa, ei tässä kyllä mitään mielenkiintoista ole. Ne vaan grillaa Tämä mielenkiintoisempaa uutiset, että nyt osa on joutunut pyytämään anteeksi siitä, että ne on pilkannut Charlie Kirkin kuolemaan.
Good morning to you. Before the president left for London yesterday on the South Lawn, he said we're going to Chicago next. There were questions about Memphis, Tennessee, which is happening right now with the Democratic mayor and governor there in Chicago as well. He said we're going there next. Kristi Noem on X yesterday. President Trump's been clear if politicians will not put the safety of their citizens first, this administration will. I was on the ground in Chicago today to make clear we are not backing down. Hey, maybe it happens, Charlie, and maybe the folks who are resisting like it.
Yeah. Oh, I think without a doubt, I think the people from whose neighborhoods a lot of these criminal aliens are being picked up, they do applaud this. And by the way, a lot of those have leaned heavily Democrat in the past. I thought what J.B. Pritzker just said right there was kind of significant. That he kind of gives away the whole game when he acknowledges that there are people that need to be picked up. Now he adds a bunch of other nonsense on there about how they're just rounding up brown-skinned people who talk differently. That's not true at all. What they are focusing on right now are people who are here in the country illegally, and specifically people who have additional crimes that they are suspected of or accused of or have been found guilty of, and that's who they're going after. And so I think that's.
It was very touching in a way that I think many of us didn't expect.
Tämä oli ABC Newsin juontaja, joka oli just sillä, että se ampuja on niin koskettava ja romanttinen kaikki sisään ja selittää tämän homman.
A very intimate portrait into this relationship between the suspect's roommate and the suspect himself, with him repeatedly calling his roommate who is transitioning, calling him my love, and I want to protect you, my love.
I don't know what you think about that, but that was reporter Matt Gutman over at ABC, and this is how he explained his commentary, not once, but twice. On X this morning, he said, yesterday I tried to underscore the jarring contrast between this cold-blooded assassination of Charlie Kirk, a man who dedicated his life to public dialogue, and the personal disturbing text read aloud by the Utah County attorney at the press conference. I deeply regret that my words did not make that clear. Charlie.
I'm glad that he attempted to apologize. But, the real problem here, Aisha, is
aika moni on joutunut nyt pyytämään
you've covered these things. When you're covering a very serious event, like a murder trial or a hearing for a murder trial of an assassination, you go with a certain mindset. And the mindset is one that is very serious, it's very factual based, it's very, and you are aware of the human casualty that is going on here. And you are respectful of what you're covering. And the idea that this guy is going to walk into this, to cover this story.
Ai niin, sitten oli hyvä, kun mennään asiasta toiseen, niin nyt oli
But first.
Palestiinan telkkari uutisoinut, tai Hamas-televisio Palestiinassa oli Gazassa uutisoinut niiden tukijoista ja niin edelleen, että ketkä länsimaalaiset näyttelijät, nythän Hollywoodissa joku kirjoittajien ja näyttelijöiden boikotti ja mielenosoitus Israelia vastaan ja Palestiinan puolesta, ja ne on kaikki tukenut Palestiinan huivit päälle ja niin edelleen. Ja tästä uutisoitiin myös Gazassa, ja ainoa juttu vaan, että siellä Gazan uutisissa, kun se on niin islamilainen, niin kuvissa esiintyviä naisia ja niiden olkapäitä.
But first, the Emmys were on last night. The Emmys, that glittering TV awards ceremony where Hollywood congratulates itself for being brave enough to say things everyone in Hollywood already believes. It's like a support group for narcissists broadcast live to the world. And the night's big moment, pop star Hannah Einbinder winning Best Supporting Actress and then immediately using her thank you speech to audition for a role of Foreign Policy Advisor. Here's how she ended her acceptance speech.
I just want to say, finally, go Birds, and free Palestine. Thank you.
Now, I was shocked by that. Not what she said, but what she didn't say. Nothing at all about climate change. I mean, come on, Hannah, you had one job. If you're going to virtue signal, you've got to hit the full progressive check.
Mihin se climate change, mihin se ilmastonmuutos on nyt kadonnut? Se on vaan muuttunut kokonaan Palestiinaan. Gretakin on vaan Palestiina. Ilmastonmuutos on unohdettu, korona unohdettiin, covid unohdettiin, ilmastonmuutos unohdettiin, kaikki on unohdettu. Kyse on vaan Hamasista. Nyt ei ketään muuten kiinnosta mikään muu, vaan Hamas pitää pelastaa.
She remembered climate change at the Critics' Choice Awards back in February.
Hey everybody, thank you to the critics. This is really exciting. Just like off the top of my head, I would say that we are on the brink of a really dark era of climate denial. And I just want to encourage everyone to fight for each other. This isn't super eloquent. I had the facts on my phone, but
you have the facts.
I just want to say that, and hopefully we can all use our voices on this issue because
yes,
planet Earth will be fine. It's humanity that's in trouble. So thank you so much.
But last night she was all about free Palestine, and her free Palestine moment was immediately picked up by the Quds News network. Now, Quds News is run by Palestinians. It's basically a Hamas mouthpiece with a TikTok account. Naturally, they were thrilled that a Hollywood actress was parroting their talking points. And so they immediately broadcast her comments. But here's where the comedy kicks in. Quds News Network broadcast her comments, but they censored her shoulders. Apparently, they're fine with free Palestine, but not so much with free collarbones. Here's how she appeared on Quds News Network. I note they didn't censor her face.
Kiitos. Tämä on islamistien kiitos vasemmistolaisille. Tämä on islamistien kiitos teille kaikille, jotka tuette Palestiinaa. Hyi, sivetä nainen, peitä olkapäät. Nämä ansaitsee toisensa. Islamistit ja vasemmisto ansaitsee toisensa. Ihan oikeasti. Ne ansaitsee toisensa. Se on kuin kaksi kusinpäätä yhdessä, ja sitten ne on vielä kusinpäitä toisilleen. Ne on yhdessä kusinpäitä koko maailmalle, ja sitten on myös kusinpäitä toisilleen. Oh my god.
They must be moderates. But there in one image is all the absurdity of those who support Hamas-run Palestine. The very movement she spoke on behalf of thought so little of her, they censored her entire upper body. And by the way, what do you make of a culture where you can call for the destruction of Israel, but God forbid you flash an elbow? It's a kind of contradiction only Islamists can manage. Hollywood lectures the world about freedom while their new besties blur out their body parts like a bad episode of Cops. Hamas wanted the infidel's words, just not her body, which coincidentally is also how Hollywood treats actresses over the age of 35. If your Emmy speech is picked up by a terrorist-linked propaganda outlet, you'd have reason for pause, wouldn't you? But no, not in Hollywood. In Hollywood, a brave act is not standing up to Islamists who hate women almost as much as they hate Jews. No, in Hollywood, courage is standing up at an awards show to say inane things before an audience of people nodding harder than a bobblehead at a pothole. Einbinder, who happens to be Jewish, could have used her Emmy speech to call for, the release of Jewish hostages. Instead, she chose to position herself against Israel itself and, in so doing, against Jews all over the world. It was a speech of ignorance, not of courage. Speaking of which, have a listen to the actress attempting to explain her comments when asked about them after the show.
I feel like it is my obligation as a Jewish person to distinguish Jews from the state of Israel because our religion and our culture is such an important and long-standing
Siis miten rikas ja kuplautunut voi oikeasti olla, jos on itse juutalainen ja ei näe mitä tapahtuu, ei näe mitä puhuu, ei näe mitä sanoo, ei tajua mistään mitään. Kuinka niinku omissa maailmoissa oma napa? My God, kapo. Vähän nykyajan kapo. Syve signaali kapo. Oh God.
Like institution that is really separate to this sort of ethno-nationalist state.
Translation, she's like one of the good Jews, unlike the 95% who stubbornly refuse to separate their faith from the world's only Jewish homeland where, small detail, half the Jewish population actually live and have lived for thousands of years. This is a person who knows so little that she's ignorant even of her own lack of knowledge. Instead, she adopts a suicidal empathy. The movement she endorses censors her image while plotting the annihilation of her people. But hey, applause is applause, right? The woman just won an Emmy, only to have her win overshadowed by her own self-loathing. She wanted to be remembered as brave. Instead, she'll be remembered as Hamas's latest unpaid intern. If only she'd listened to Ricky Gervais when he hosted a similar awards show.
If you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg.
Se seurasi mun edellistä Twitter-tiliä ja me heiteltiin pari viestiä vastakkain, mutta sitten mut bännättiin, niin se ei ole enää seurannut uusta tiliä, tai ei varmaan tiedä, mistä ei se edes tunne mua tai mitään, mutta edellistä tiliä niin seurasi. Ja sen kanssa pari kertaa heitinkin DM ja vastasi pari kertaa, mutta ei se enempää. Joo, tää on kyllä tosi hyvä puheenriikki, että katsotaan tää vielä. Otamme sellaan lähes näin.
Don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and
fuck off.
So, you can't say wisdom hasn't been chasing these Hollywood stars. It's just that they're always running so fast away from it.
Joo, ei media kiinnosta tippaakaan. Syyria ja se Syyrian presidentti, se Al-Qaida ISIS-tyyppi, sehän on vaan normalisoitu, että se ei olekaan enää terroristia. Niin edelleen. Tässä on muuten Oxford Unionin uusin presidentti. Oxford Unionin uusin presidentti on pitänyt puheen, missä se vähän haukkuu kuollutta miestä ja niin edelleen. Näkyisikö tästä siitä tyypistä? Tässä. Kato, Oxford Union president. George R.R.
In the world we desire. And Side Prop will argue that at times there is simply nothing else that can be required other than violent retaliation. And this is a view I wholeheartedly agree with. The view that some institutions are too broken, too aggressive, too oppressive to be reformed, like cancers of our society. They must and they should be taken down by any means necessary.
I mean, you compare those words.
Mä en oikeasti ymmärrä, mitä länsimaalaisia yliopistoja vaivaa. Kaikki on niin radikaaleja. Kaikista on tullut kunnon take them down, destroy them, shoot them, kill them. Toi on Oxford Unionin presidentti toi äijä. Kun on gangsta duragi päällä ja rastat. Siis come on bro.
To the words of Charlie Kirk, someone who was promoting fighting with words, not with violence.
Yes, he promoted with words, and you're absolutely right.
No. Musta tuntuu, että siitä FBI, Kash Patel, bla bla bla, se on vielä käynnissä, voitte käydä katsomassa, ja sen Fox Newsilla on live siellä koko ajan käynnissä. Mä en nyt jaksa enempää sitä katsoa, että ei siellä oikeasti, se on ollut käynnissä jo monta tuntia, eikä siellä mitään uutta tule esille. Ne on vaan tommosia kuulusteluja, ja ei ne ole edes mitään oikeudenkäyntiä tai mitään, ne on vaan senaatin kuulusteluja kuulumisia, ja kysytään ja vaihdetaan info julkisesti, that's it. Ja lopetellaan nyt varmaan, että tää ollaan oltu vähän yli tunti tässä, niin tilatkaa kanava, laittakaa tykkäystä, jakakaa ynnä muuta. Katsotaan yhdessä uutisia aina silloin tällöin, kun pystytään ja kerätään. Ei mulla muuta kuin vaan, että hyvää iltaa kaikille.